Right, so I'm going to do a tier list for Elite General Token Commanders and Awakening. So if you've never seen a tier list before, the way it works is the lower down, the worse it is, the higher up, the better it is. So we'll go from the bottom up. I think at the bottom it has to be Soren, right? I mean, this guy contributes literally nothing. He has no PvP stats at all. He just has like gold and research speed. So I think the only place he'll really be good is on like gold farm alts. I mean, he's decent for rebels and training grounds too. So you could get some use out of him there, but you can put your resources into such better places, I think, unless you're just a huge max account. You can just get whatever they want. But he's definitely the worst. He has to be. Also, his 4-star ability, I think it gives double resources gathered, but it only affects like the march that he himself is gathering in. So even that is pretty terrible, really. And then I think next is probably Kravras. I mean, Kravras is a weird one. He's honestly very, very good at what he does. The problem is just what he does isn't very popular or meta at all. So he's good for bow traps, really. He's fortification buffs and bow attack, and then a pretty good 4-star ability too. So he's good at that. The problem is just no one runs bows, so he loses a lot of value just through that. Because whilst he's good at what he does, if no one's doing what he does, what's even the point? So if you are running a bow trap, he's a very good investment, but like he has aptitude and something else in the tavern, so you can't even get him up for that to get value out of him. There's definitely better options you can go for, I think. And I think it's probably Sheila, the third bowman. She's interesting, because like Kravras, she's good for bow trap builds. She has fortification, attack, and bow attack. But she also has combat rate in the tavern, and she's also very good in rebel leader formations and training grounds. Obviously, if you do well in training grounds, it indirectly means more diamonds long term. And she's good in like werewood memories and the like. So honestly, she's somewhat decent up to like 2-star because of all that. It's kind of cheap to get her there. She should only really be a secondary priority after the combat commanders. So I think if you have a like level 50, her tavern stats would give the equivalent of 1.25% total attack, total defense, and total health. So it's like 3.75% total stats passively just from that, which isn't bad at all for like 120 tokens in the books. But it's definitely falling behind these guys down here. Like, she doesn't bring what they bring in PvP, which Awakening is just amazing for. You can also go all the way to 4-star with her, which reduces the grain your army eats by 50%. And then if you combine that with the 50% scroll here, you can actually reach 100% upkeep reduction. And then even if you have like millions and millions of troops, your castle will produce grain, or at least not eat it, which helps with like training, healing, whatever for bigger accounts. You just end up churning through a ton. So you can just like send yourself preemptively millions and millions and just heal and train to your heart's content whenever you need to. So she has her uses and pros to her even when you're not building into bows. So I think she's a bit better than Kravras because of that. She could maybe go down here, but I'll leave her there for now. I mean, next is probably Haley. You can probably apply the same logic because she is combat rate. So if you get to 2-star, it'll be the same. Like 3.75% stats if she's a level 50. If you're low spending and don't have better options, she will be good for PvP as well. But she only has inf attack, she doesn't have health or defense passively, so you lose a lot of stats through that because nothing else gets multiplied by that 1.6 times multiplier at 3 stars. But with like the 10k army size you get as a buff at rank 10, the buffs to her active, attack in itself being the best stat, although if you're running Inf it's probably on your front, so health is a little better in that specific situation, but attack gives you flexibility. Overall she's okay. Her 4-star, as I understand it, is pretty terrible. Like, it reads decently, but it only affects 1 instance of damage. So, I've got some reports here. So, like, it would negate this. It would negate losing 1.2k infantry. Which, I mean, it's better than losing that 1.2k infantry, but it's not amazing for the investment you need to put into it. Because you can just leave her at 3-star and not put in that extra 320 tokens and still get all the hidden bonuses from books. So all you're getting at 4-star is the active buffs and that ability. So if you have the tokens lying around and you can afford it, and you run her in PvP because you don't have like paid options that are better, getting it there is good, but again, I think it's a lower priority like Sheila. You can probably spend your tokens a little better. She also has the added motivation cap, which does help in similar ways that Sheila does, where she gets value outside of just PvP. But she's not great for rebels or training grounds, unlike her, so a lot of the multi-purpose strength Sheila has gets lost from Haley. And then it's probably Robb next. He's either B or A. He gives, I think, 18% attack with the max book buffs. And the buffs he gets toward his active will make a huge difference in active damage, which means you'll still be bringing a lot of damage to the fight. But in essence, he's still a Cav front commander, and Cav front isn't too popular outside of specific countering scenarios, because Imp Spear and Spear Cav seem to be the most popular formations you see in the like middle bracket of the game. Most Cav don't have the worst offensive stat. The unit they're countered by has the highest attack stat, so effectively they're the least tanky unit in the game because they get countered hardest because spears have the highest base damage. I think a tier 4 spear has a 10 higher base attack than tier 4 cav, which isn't a huge difference, but then the gap only gets bigger and bigger as you go up in the stat percentages. So spears get shredded, spears shred cav really hard, and because of that you want to avoid putting cav in your front unless you're sure it's going to counter, like you're running into Imp Cav or something. He can still be a good option to level though. He does have leadership and combat rate in the tavern. I think at level 50, which I'm using an example, it will give like 1500 army size, and that's passive army size, so it will get multiplied by army size increases, so it would be more like 2.25k minimum, which is pretty decent. I've just left him at 2-star myself because of what I've said about Cav front, but even for that he's alright just for the tavern stats. I think he's not a bad investment at all for just 120 tokens. So if you run Cav front, he's honestly pretty decent. It'll probably go here, but he's a victim of what he buffs. So Cav is popular, but it's normally in the backline, and that just isn't what Robb does, sadly. Hopefully they do release a Cav attack commander soon, because, well, one that you can upgrade for free at least in Awakening, because there's one for Spear with Gorell, and then there's 3 for Inf. So, well, 2 for imp. And seg is total attack, so he sort of counts. 2.5 for imp. So there's really like a gap in the market there for Cav, and I think we're seeing that cause a bit of a formational imbalance in the game right now, because Imp Spear and Spear Cav were already probably the most popular formations, and all these awakening options are just making it even more so that Imp Spear especially is just getting buffed so much that Cav formations are just getting left behind a little. Because Gorell, he's best, because of how his active works, he works best on the back line, because if your spears all die, his active won't proc, so you don't want them getting defeated in the fight. And then Chris's active buffs imp defense, so that only gets benefits if your imp for taking damage, and the same with Haley, it's just stopping your imp taking damage. So all of their abilities are set up perfectly for Imp Spear, and it's really pushing people towards that formation, I feel like. Which, I mean, it's alright, but I don't think it's entirely healthy for the game. I think a lot of people feel forced into that formation just because it's what's most available for them in terms of good stats. And then I'll move him back down to B because he's only good if you run Cav front. And then Chris is probably next. He has no combat stats in the Tavern, but he's got Imp Attack and Imp Health, which are both very strong stats if you're Imp focused. He gives, I think, 66% Imp Attack and Health, and 18% Imp Defense at max, which is huge. I think he's very good, to be honest. His 4-star ability isn't great, realistically, but it's probably still better than Seg's, at least, just because it will get more constant value. Your frontline will always be dropping numbers in fights, so it's basically just more passive defense through that. I mean, his stats are good. His ability is at least somewhat decent in terms of elite token options go. And he has attack, so he can work well on the backline as well, unlike Robb. So I think Chris is solid. I mean, maybe not the best, but he's definitely solid. And then I think Seg is probably next. Seg is either A or S. He's probably S. I mean, he's very popular, right? He gives, I think, 43.3% total attack and defense and 9.6% total health, and then 40% training speed, totally maxed out. The total attack alone is amazing. Like, if you're running 2 or 3 lines, you get so much value out of that. If you're defending in like Imp Spear Cav, he'll effectively be bringing like 130% attack to your city, which is huge. And then the total defense and total health, they'll also get value when your front gets broken through as well, which is always good. But pushing him to 4-star, honestly, his ability is kind of terrible. Like, it reads well, right? It's 39% totals overall for 10 seconds. That's great. But if you look at reports, like, it procs here at 1 second, but then like your own units only start attacking after 7 or 8 seconds. So you actually get so little uptime from it, because a lot of that time is wasted from the troops marching in the fight itself. So his 4-star basically does nothing. It's really bad. It's really weak. You'll still get the huge buffs to his active at 4-star, so it's still worth getting him there if you run him in your formations, because he will be a big DPS increase through that. And he also has leadership and combat rate in the Tavern, which is obviously amazing. It makes Seg overall very, very good value, I think. He's very versatile, he can do a lot of things, he brings a lot of things. You don't even have to be specialized into him to get good value out of him because of all that. And then I think the best elite token commander is Gorell. He, in terms of PvP effectiveness at least, because he doesn't have good tavern stats at all, he has no combat stats in the tavern. But he's got attack on him, so he works well in the back line as well as the front line with spear defense. It's like a 66% spear attack, 66% spear defense, and 18% spear health. As I mentioned before, spears are very popular in the most meta formations, both on the back and the front lines in Imp Spear and Spear Cav. So he's actually the only option for spears you can get for free right now, which puts him in a really good position, because like what I was saying with Robb, he's a victim of Wai buffs just not being popular. Gorell really benefits from Wai buffs being very popular, and that makes him stand out from the other options a bit. But also his 4-star ability is really, really solid, because it's a 3% total defense debuff on every time your spears hit. So it's this, but you can see it procs every second, and the way it works is it's only applied on the front line or what you're hitting. So if he broke here through my infantry to my spear, it would then stack back from 0 up and you'd lose the previous stacks. But it stacks every single second, which leads it to getting huge amounts of value, because if you don't break through the front line, say you're hitting 4 million infantry in the front or something, it will stack up to 90-100% defense increase overall, and that is just crazy. It averages out to what, 50% defense reduction across the entire fight? And that's very, very good. It's actually better than most epic token awakenings even. It's one of the better abilities in the game. And I think that's all. Hopefully they add the Cav Attack Commander soon, and it will shake things up a bit. I think right now, this is where I stand on things. You could shift a few things around. That wouldn't look terrible. That wouldn't look terrible. There is some room for discussion, but I think this is what I think right now.